In a dramatic turn of events, 5 teenagers face the ultimate reckoning as they receive their life sentences, forever altering their paths and those of their victims' families. Among them was Seandell Jackson, whose cold, remorseless demeanor shocked the courtroom. Jackson, born in February of 1991, and his accomplice Derek Thomas, took the life of 21-year-old Nathan Potter in a senseless robbery, showing no sympathy or regret. Accompanying Jackson's chilling display were the reactions of McKenzie Shurilla, Aiden Fucci, Shoaf, and Sheila Eddy. Each faced the consequences of their heinous actions, with Shurilla, Fucci, and Shoaf displaying varying degrees of emotion, while Eddy's demeanor remained elusive, hiding her true thoughts behind a mask of indifference. As these teenagers stood before the judge, their fates sealed, the courtroom witnessed a mix of sorrow, anger, and disbelief. The impact of their crimes reverberated through the hearts of those present, leaving a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the irreversible consequences of their actions.
She's the teenager who killed her boyfriend and another friend by deliberately driving into a brick wall. Surveillance captured her car whizzing by like a rocket at 100 miles an hour. Today, McKenzie Shurilla spoke through tears as she expressed remorse for the death of ex-boyfriend Dominic Russo and his friend Davian Flanagan, who was sitting in the back seat of the car.
We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away, and I'm so sorry.
Then she sobbed as the sentence was pronounced.
She's sentenced on count 1, the murder of Dominic Russo, 15 years to life.
Prosecutors say McKenzie was also trying to kill herself, but she survived the crash.
A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder.
The mother of her dead boyfriend addressed the court.
In a chilling turn of events, 17-year-old McKenzie Shurilla found herself in a courtroom, facing a life-altering sentence for a crime that shattered lives. On a fateful day, McKenzie's life took a tragic turn when she decided to turn her car into a weapon, causing a horrific crash that claimed the lives of her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his friend Davian Flanagan. Prosecutors painted a picture of a toxic relationship where McKenzie had allegedly made violent threats against Dominic and his property. They argued that the crash was not an accident but a premeditated act of murder. The court heard how McKenzie had allegedly planned the crime days before, taking the same route to plot the crime. In a heartbreaking moment, McKenzie tearfully apologized to the victims' families, expressing deep sorrow and claiming she could not remember the events leading to the crash. However, the judge, unmoved by her words, handed down a sentence that would change her life forever. The judge found McKenzie Shurilla guilty of 2 counts of murder and sentenced her to 15 years to life in each count, to be served concurrently. As she was led away in handcuffs, McKenzie's future seemed bleak, facing the reality of spending the rest of her days behind bars. McKenzie's case serves as a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences of reckless actions and the irreversible impact they can have on the lives of those involved. As she begins her sentence, she is left to ponder the choices that led her down this tragic path, while the families of Dominic Russo and Davian Flanagan are left to grapple with the pain of their loss, forever haunted by the memory of that fateful day.
The parents are okay. And Mr. Fucci just wanted to make a short statement.
I just want to say I plead out guilty, and that I'm sorry for the Bailey family and my family.
Okay. On a day that should have been like any other, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci sat in the back of a police car, seemingly unfazed by the gravity of his situation. Just days before, he had committed a heinous act that would shock his community and the nation. Aiden was a classmate of Patriot Oaks Academy in St. Johns County, Florida. His victim was a 13-year-old girl, a fellow student, whose life ended in a brutal and senseless manner. The details of the crime were as disturbing as they were tragic. The events unfolded on a seemingly ordinary day, much like any other school day. Aiden and the young girl were captured on video walking together, giving no indication of the horror that was about to unfold. Later, another video showed Aiden running away from the area where the girl's body was found. It was a stark contrast to the seemingly innocent stroll they had taken earlier. The girl's body was discovered in the woods, brutally stabbed 114 times. The sheer brutality of the attack sent shockwaves through the community and left everyone questioning how such a young person could commit such a heinous act. After his arrest, Aiden showed a shocking lack of remorse, taking snapshots in the back of the police car as if he were on a joyride. His casual demeanor only added to the horror of the crime he had committed. In court, Aiden pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. Due to his age at the time of the crime, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As the judge handed down the sentence, Aiden remained still, showing little emotion, a stark contrast to the devastation he caused.
Mr. Miller, you have the right to make a statement. It's called allocution. Is there anything you'd like to say to me before I sentence you?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly accept responsibility for the role that I've played in the murder of a human Graber. I would like to apologize for my actions, first and foremost, to the family. I'm sincerely sorry.
In a small town in southeastern Iowa, the tranquility of Fairfield High School was shattered by a chilling and premeditated act of violence that would forever change the lives of those involved. At the center of this tragedy were two teenagers, Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale, both just 16 years old at the time. Their target, their high school Spanish teacher, Noema Graber. The motive for their heinous crime? A bad grade. Willard, a student in Mrs. Graber's class, had received a grade he deemed unacceptable. Fueled by anger and resentment, he enlisted the help of his friend Jeremy to carry out his sinister plan. On the day of the murder, Mrs. Graber went for her usual walk at Shadowwalka City Park, unaware of the horrors that awaited her. As she walked along the trail, Willard and Jeremy lay in wait, hidden from view, their minds set on violence. When Mrs. Graber approached, Willard struck her in the back of the head with a blunt object, rendering her unconscious. But their intentions were far from over. They then proceeded to drag her into the woods, where they beat her to death with a baseball bat. Their plan didn't end with her death. They had intended to hide her body, burying it deep in the woods, hoping it would never be found. Their callousness and lack of remorse were evident in their actions, as they showed a complete disregard for the life they had taken. After the murder, both boys were arrested, and during the investigation, damning evidence came to light. Snapchat messages between Jeremy and others revealed their involvement in the crime. One message, in particular, sent shockwaves through the community. Quote, "Point of view, you're my Spanish teacher, and this is the last thing you see. Time to hide a body." In court, Jeremy pleaded guilty and testified against his former friend, Willard. He admitted to his role in the murder and expressed deep regret for his actions. He acknowledged the pain and suffering he had caused to Mrs. Graber's family and friends. Willard, too, expressed remorse for his actions, apologizing to Mrs. Graber's family and accepting full responsibility for his role in the murder. However, his words cannot undo the irreparable damage he had caused. The judge, taking into account their age and the severity of their crime, sentenced both boys to life in prison. Willard was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 35 years, while Jeremy was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As they were led away to begin their sentences, the full weight of their actions seemed to finally hit home. Their once bright futures were now darkened by the shadow of their crimes, a stark reminder of the consequences of their choices.
Sheila Eddy, how do you plead to the offense of murder in the first degree of the felony charged in count 3 of the indictment in this case?
Guilty.
The record will reflect that the defendant has entered a plea of guilty to the offense of murder in the first degree of the felony charged in count 3 of the indictment in this case. You may be seated. Watch the chair, please. Well, what would the state have expected to prove in this case if it had gone to trial?
Your Honor, on the night of July 5th and 6th, 2012, Skylar Neese disappeared and was never seen alive again.
In the quiet town of Star City, West Virginia, the lives of 3 teenage girls were forever changed by a chilling plan that would end in tragedy. Rachel Shoaf and Sheila Eddy, both 16 years old at the time, conspired to commit an unthinkable act of violence against their friend, 16-year-old Skylar Neese. Skylar, Rachel, and Sheila were once inseparable friends, their bond seemingly unbreakable. However, beneath the surface, a dark plot was brewing. Rachel and Sheila had decided they no longer liked Skylar and hatched a plan to take her life. On the night of July 5, 2012, the girls drove to a remote area in Pennsylvania, where they had previously hidden knives. At an agreed-upon moment, Rachel and Sheila attacked Skylar, stabbing her to death. The brutality of the attack was shocking, with Skylar suffering multiple stab wounds. After the crime, Rachel and Sheila returned home as if nothing had happened, concealing the truth of their horrific actions. For months, Skylar's disappearance remained a mystery, with her family and friends desperate for answers. The truth would eventually come to light when Rachel confessed to the crime. In exchange for her cooperation, Rachel pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10 years. In court, Rachel expressed deep remorse for her actions, acknowledging the pain and suffering she had caused. She apologized to Skylar's family, recognizing that there were no words to describe the guilt and remorse she felt each day. Sheila, on the other hand, maintained her innocence until the end. She went to trial and was convicted of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Despite her sentence, Sheila showed little emotion, a stark contrast to the devastation she had caused. The case of Rachel Shoaf and Sheila Eddy serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within seemingly ordinary teenagers. It is a tragic tale of friendship betrayed and lives lost, leaving a community shattered and families torn apart.
Life and the need to protect the community, which I also fear for with Mr. Jackson being out in the community. I am going to go ahead on count 1, the first-degree intentional homicide conviction, and I am going to sentence Mr. Jackson to life imprisonment without possibility for extended supervision. I know that that is something that is reserved for the most serious of cases, and I believe that this case rises to that level.
The courtroom was tense, the air thick with emotion as Seandell Jackson stood before the judge, awaiting his fate. His eyes darted around, his expression a mix of defiance and desperation. Nathan Potter's family sat in the front row, their eyes filled with tears and anger, their hearts still raw from the loss of their beloved son and brother. Seandell Jackson was just 19 years old when he committed the heinous crime that would forever change the lives of those involved. On that fateful day in July 2009, he and his accomplice, Derek Thomas, had planned to rob Nathan Potter. As he walked to his River West apartment, armed and intent on their goal, they approached Nathan, demanding money. When Nathan, who had none to give, refused, Seandell callously shot and killed him. Throughout the trial, Seandell showed no remorse for his actions, displaying a chilling lack of empathy for Nathan's devastated family. Witnesses reported seeing him smirk and gesture toward the grieving family, a disturbing display of callousness that only added to their pain. Nathan's mother, Denise, addressed the court, speaking of the evil she saw in Seandell's eyes as he looked at them, swearing and smiling. She begged the judge to ensure that Seandell would never have the opportunity to harm another innocent person, to ensure that he would never walk free again. Nathan's father, James, echoed Denise's sentiments, stating that while nothing could bring back their beloved son, ensuring that Seandell remained behind bars for the rest of his life would at least prevent him from inflicting further pain and suffering on others. As the judge prepared to deliver Seandell's sentence, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke of the need to protect the community from individuals like Seandell, individuals who showed a complete disregard for human life. She sentenced Seandell to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never again have the opportunity to harm another person. As Seandell heard his sentence, he looked over his shoulder, glaring at Nathan's family. A female officer tried to force him to look forward, but he struggled against her, a look of pure hatred on his face. Sobbing could be heard in the background as Nathan's family held on to each other, tears streaming down their faces. Despite the chaos, the judge remained resolute, her decision final. Seandell was quickly handcuffed and ushered out of the courtroom, his family's cries of support fading as he was taken away. Nathan's family, though still grieving, found some measure of closure in knowing that justice had been served and that Seandell would never again be able to cause harm. As the gavel fell and the sentences were pronounced, the courtroom fell silent, enveloped in a somber reflection of lives lost and futures destroyed. The 5 teenagers, now condemned to spend the rest of their days behind bars, left a trail of devastation in their wake, forever altering the lives of their victims' families. Their stories serve as a grim reminder of the consequences of senseless violence and the importance of addressing the underlying issues that lead young individuals down destructive paths. As they begin their life sentences, these teenagers are a stark example of the tragic outcomes that can result from a moment of impulsive, irreversible actions.